7 million years of human history may end in a couple of moments, but not because of a nuclear war or an alien invasion, and not even because of a collision with a meteorite. Mankind is on the verge of destruction. It can fall at the hands of its creators, namely at the hands of the gods themselves. Every 1,000 years, the gods gather in the council chamber of Valhalla to decide the fate of mankind. The gods propose to destroy humanity, since it does not develop, but only degrades and pollutes this world. And at the moment of sentencing, a Valkyrie named Brynhilde suddenly enters. She offered to arrange a Ragnarok, the last battle between gods and people, where 13 people will fight against 13 gods in a one-on-one duel, and the side that wins 7 fights first will win. However, the gods rejected her idea of fights, and then Brynhilde called the gods cowards, which greatly offended her ego, and therefore Zeus was interested in this situation, and he agreed on Ragnarok. And he also gave Brynhilde the right to choose the people who will represent humanity, and these must be the strongest 13 people this world could ever see. After a while in the arena of Valhalla, Heimdall, the guardian of the apocalypse, announces the start of Ragnarok. And he also says that according to the rules of this game, the one who destroyed the enemy wins. And in the first battle, the long-haired, green-eyed berserker of thunder will act from the gods, the god Thor, along with his hammer Mjolnir, and the strongest, most ferocious thug with stickers on his body, the greatest Chinese general Lu Bu, will be the first to speak for the people. And all his warriors and commanders of the Three Kingdoms era came to support him, where there were the drunkard Jin Fi, Liu Bei, and the strongest commander Guan Yu, who is considered the strongest commander. However, even he believes that he is inferior to Liu Bu in terms of strength. After that, Heimdall Blue announced the start of the first duel. However, none of the fighters even moved from their place, since both of them are not afraid of the enemy's attacks. And it also turns out that they are similar to each other in that they end all their battles with one blow. But then, Liu Bu summoned weapons from the sky, and they began to fight. He attacked first, but Thor parried his blow without any problems, and Liu Bu managed to push the god back a couple of meters. However, in response, Thor, using only crumbs of his strength, pushed Liu Bu back a couple of tens of meters. After that, they began to fight, and it turned out that now they are equal in strength. And Thor, realizing that he had met a worthy opponent, decided, like God, to show him respect and use more of his strength. But before continuing the battle, we were shown a story from ancient Asgard, which was surrounded by high walls that protected the inhabitants from the ice giants of Jotunheim. But one day, a real attack of the Titans began, where 66 giants attacked the city at once, and this happened for the first time. In this connection, the local god of war Tyr and the guardians came to the defense of the city. However, they were all killed, and the giants began to devour the inhabitants of Asgard. And since there was no local Aaron here, Thor appeared and, opening the doors of the palace, he killed all the Titans with his super attack. And since then, his death attack is called Lightning Quality Strike. However, even this battle then could not dispel Thor's boredom. After we were returned to the arena, where Thor attacked Liu Bu with his lightning attack, and from this blow, even Aphrodite's chest was in shock. However, Liu Bu withstood the blow, and moreover was even able to injure Thor in response, which caused shock to everyone who watched this fight. After that, Liu Bu and Thor realized that they were very similar, and if they lived in the same era or belonged to the same species, they would most likely be friends. In the meantime, only boredom unites them. In this connection, we were also shown the past of Liu Bu, where he was born in the province of China, and since childhood, he, realizing his strength, was looking for an opponent who would be stronger than him. And so he quickly crossed the continent, and his name quickly gained popularity. But even killing entire armies alone and gaining many followers, for as many as 30 years of wandering, Liu Bu could not find a warrior stronger than him. And out of his boredom, Liu Bu surrendered to the emperor. After all, realizing that he is the strongest, he lost the meaning of life. And it turns out that his own boredom took his life. Further, we were returned to the arena, where now Liu Bu realized that he had finally met a worthy opponent. And he began to enjoy this fight. And the gods noticed that Liu Bu was able to repel Thor's blow, and his weapon did not break, although no human weapon can withstand the blow of a divine weapon. And Zeus realized that these were the tricks of Brynhilde. And it turned out that before the start of Ragnarok, During the search for applicants, she clearly understood that a man cannot defeat a god without help, and in order to catch up with it, a person must be endowed with divine weapons. And for this, Brynhilde called on all her Valkyrie sisters. This is the first time that all 13 sisters have come together. However, only Ragnagоk, the fourth of the Valkyries, has so far appeared before Geir and Brynhilde. Brynhilde asked her if she knew about the sacred objects and weapons of Thor, and the fourth said that Thor uses yarn-great gloves, which can repel any attack. They also protect him from the power of Mjolnir, and these are the strongest items of Thor. And it turns out that in order to defeat him, you need to defeat his objects. After that, Brynhilde asked her sister if she was ready to give her life for the salvation of mankind, and she agreed. And then, before the start of the battle, Ragnagоk turned into a halberd and became the weapon of Lubu. This technique is called Velend, where the Valkyrie turns into a weapon and thereby gives a person the weapon of a god. And since Thor has excellent protection, Ragnagоk, whose name translates as Shield Destroyer, was chosen to fight him. Further, we were also explained that Mjolnir is the strongest weapon that can even destroy the continent, and whoever can lift this hammer will be destroyed by its lava-like heat. Therefore, yarn-great gloves flaunt on Thor's hands to protect his hands. And right after this blow, Lubu was able to destroy Thor's glove with his blow, and the hammer fell to the ground. After that, Herms already explained to us that the Valkyries were created to accompany the souls of people to heaven, where they became warriors of the gods and stood up to protect heaven. And the Valkyries endowed them with the power of the gods, turning them into weapons, and this power was called Velend. And now the Valkyries also collect souls and grant them the power with which they fight the gods. This is the essence of Ragnarok. Well, Zeus then agreed to this since he liked everything that happened. And also he immediately noticed Brynhilde, who immediately made it clear to him that she was not excited because of the old people. Well, in parallel with this, Mjolnir began to overheat and melt everything around. And since Thor was left with only one glove, there is a possibility that he will not be able to lift the hammer. And the hammer already, further, began to pulsate. And Thor called it the awakening of the hammer. And already further, Zeus explains to us that everyone incorrectly interprets the role of Thor's gloves. After all, they are needed not to protect his hands from the hammer, but they are needed to restrain the true power of Thor so that he does not destroy the hammer with his power before his final awakening. Further, after these events, Thor raised his pulsating object and asked Lubu not to die immediately and let him enjoy this fight. At the same time, Brynhilde received an SMS on her phone with information about the participants in the Ragnarok, and also this information about the battles reached the gods. After that, we were again returned to the battlefield, where for the first time in history, everyone saw the true power of Thor, and he threw his hammer at Lubu, and he never misses with this attack. But suddenly, unexpectedly, Lubu, like Neo from the Matrix, manages to dodge, and he immediately begins to counterattack, but Mjolnir manages to return to Thor, and it turns out that he was throwing him so that he would pick up speed and not try to hit Lubu. He simply picked up speed so that he could hit Lubu with all his might, but Lubu was able to withstand this blow. However, his legs were broken due to the force of the blow. But suddenly his horse, nicknamed the Red Hare, appeared. Lubu jumped on him, and we were shown his memories from childhood, where lightning struck a huge tree before his eyes. And instead of being scared, on the contrary, he enjoyed it. He also thought that someone very cool lives in the sky. Further, we were again returned to the battle, where Lubu asked the horse if he was ready to die for the victory. And having received the go-ahead to do so, Lubu grabbed the very edge of the halberd to use his strongest blow, the Sky Eater. With this blow, he once divided the sky in half, and now he finally got the chance to use this blow for its intended purpose. Well, Thor, in turn, decided to use his strongest blow of the Hammer of Thor, and the result was just an unreal clash of power, from which Lubu lost his limbs, and Ragnagоk fell lifeless. But even in this state, Lubu decided to continue the fight using his teeth. However, Thor decapitated him with his next attack, and as a result, he won this battle in 16 minutes 18 seconds. And absolutely everyone enjoyed watching this confrontation. After that, the military leaders who watched the battle drank to their general, who died with a smile on his face. But Thor, leaving the arena, was again sad, since he did not have time to enjoy the fight. But suddenly further, a red hare appeared, riding on which was General Chun Gong's assistant with a whole army. They shouted that they were Lu Bu's warriors and that they would kill someone anyway. Well, Thor, in honor of the general, decided to accept this battle and call it an offering to his already friend Lu Bu. And he killed them all. Well, at the same time, Geir, who did not understand, asked Brynhilde what would happen to Lu Bu and Rangrid now, to which the first replied that now they can't even be resurrected, since their souls are no more. Geir, on the other hand, was shocked that Brynhilde did not mourn for her sister in the slightest. But the first explained that now their lives are needed to defeat the gods and save humanity. Therefore, she is ready for anything to win. Then we were shown the Akashic records. There Brynhilde chose the second representative of the people, and she decided to bet on man's hatred of the gods. In this connection, we were further returned to the Resord arena, where the first of the men and the father of all mankind, Adam, will act for people. And against him, in theory, the Indian god Shiva should fight. However, on the way to the arena, he was intercepted by Zeus, to whom Shiva with great reluctance conceded this battle. And now we are planning to fight the father of all people and the father of all gods, on the basis of which Zeus recommended Adam to summon weapons in the same way as Lu Bu. Zeus thinks this guy won't last even a minute without him. And further, a Pegasus appeared, on which sat the seventh of the Valkyries Ragnagоk, the rider of the storm. Adam tasted her forbidden fruit, their hearts joined, and she turned into brass knuckles. Afterward, Adam called Zeus a dude and asked where his weapon was. But God replied that he would fight with his bare hands, and Zeus immediately attacked him at the speed of light, but the first one was able to dodge. After that, Zeus began to speed up his attacks, but he could not hit Adam. But Adam counterattacked in response to this and also began to accelerate with each attack, and he beat Zeus so well with his blows. He also started copying his divine attacks, and from this even Ares, the god of war, his nuts trembled. But Zeus himself just enjoyed it. And Brynhilde explained to us that since the gods made Adam in their own image, it means that he is their copy, and therefore he can copy the methods of the gods. This is called divine reflection. After that, Zeus again attacked Adam with lightning speed, but he dodged and with his slender, prehistoric Sharingan copied his techniques and hit him, breaking his neck. But Zeus, in response, decided to use the technique that he felt on himself during the battle with his father Kronos. This was his final move, a fist ahead of time, violating all the laws of time. However, Adam was able to dodge again and, copying the blow, counterattacked. And Zeus was on Earth. Further, Ares, the god of war, joined in the explanation. He clarified that the usual moves like the meteor strike and the divine low kick were not even visible to the average gods. But now even Ares himself could not see the blow ahead of time. And this proves that Adam is at an unrealistically high level. In this connection, we were shown the past, where once in paradise Adam and Eve lived in harmony with nature, until one day the serpent decided to take possession of Eve. But she was faithful to her husband, and the snake only got an apple in the face. And after that, the snake held a grudge. And before the gods, he is everything, as if Eve had bitten the forbidden fruit. And since it was the gods who judged her, they found her guilty, and she will be expelled from paradise. However, further, Adam entered the hall with a whole basket of apples, which he defiantly bit and spat out along the way. As they were sour, he approached Eva and said that since she was being kicked out, he would go with her. And the snake at that moment was seething with anger, and he began to turn into a monster to kill Adam. But he repelled his attacks without any problems, and as a result, killed the snake. And after that, Adam and Eve went to Earth to create their paradise where they lived happily ever after. Next, we were returned to the battlefield, where Heimdall was about to declare Adam the winner. But suddenly Zeus got to his feet and put his head back. Further, he said that he did not see in Adam that there was hatred for the gods. He wonders what he is fighting for now. And the father of all people replied that he was now fighting to protect his children. In this regard, Zeus further began to transform into his final form called Adamas. His muscles were very tense, and he seemed to be barely holding them back, and everyone felt a sharp jump in his strength. Adam, realizing that he smelled fried, for the first time stood up in a defensive stance, after which Zeus attacked him with the strongest blow of divine truth. However, Adam was able to repel this attack as well, and he also parried a blow with his left hand. Further, he simply began to beat Zeus, but Adam himself suddenly began to bleed. And this is most likely his body overheating and bursting at the seams, because using the reflection techniques, his system is already at the limit. Zeus was also already at the limit, but still they continued the fight in the same rhythm. And now this battle of endurance. And as a result, Adam was the first to lose ground, and Zeus began to beat him, and he lost his sight. However, until the very end, he was determined to win, and he missed blows to grab Zeus. And they began to exchange blows, where Zeus could not stand the first. But it turned out that he did not lose, since by this time, Adam was already dead. And it happened a couple of minutes before, and he struck blows with muscle memory. In this regard, Zeus recognized the power of Adam, and said that he was truly unique. And basically, if this wasn't an endurance battle, Adam would have won. And although now people were in a little shock from losing in 2 rounds, they still held on, because Adam left behind a great legacy. Next, we were shown Geir, who ran to Brynhilde to ask why Ragnagоk died. Christ, the second of the Valkyries, began to calm her there. She explained that during the application of Velund, a person and a Valkyrie become one, and this is not just a transformation into a weapon. In other words, they share their fate together, they fight together and die together. And Christ tried to comfort her sister with her breasts. Well, the second one herself was furious that her sisters were dying from the gods, and she yearned for revenge. And in Christ herself there are 2 forces at once, and her name means trembling with fear and burning with anger. Well, Brynhilde at that time seized her grief with food, because Zeus defeated her trump card. In the 3rd duel, there will be a fight against Poseidon. He is the elder brother of Zeus and one of the best fighters from the gods. In this regard, the first one first silenced Geir, and after that she began to think about whom she should put against the now sea Zeus. And suddenly the Japanese Sasaki Kojiro came to her unexpectedly. He said that he would go out one-on-one with Poseidon. However, the Valkyries, judging him by his appearance, thought that this was just an old man's joke. But further, he demonstrated his skills on the falling milk. And Brynhilde saw in him the features of a true master. He also explained that 400 years have passed since his death, and all this time, he never stopped training his blade skills. His Ganryu evolution is not over yet, as his golden age of Kojiro has now arrived. And as a result, they gave him the green light to fight, and Christ decided to become his weapon. Next, we were transferred to the arena, which was specially modified for the most formidable god, Poseidon, who instills fear even in the gods. Well, his opponent will be the greatest loser in history, Sasaki Kojiro, who is underestimated by everyone. After all, during his lifetime he was far from an ideal swordsman. There is not a single victory on his account. However, now that his katana touched the water, he was able to still the water. And all the greatest swordsmen of all time saw that Sasaki was able to achieve the form that all swordsmen aspire to. And by doing so, they recognized that he had truly become the greatest swordsman in history. Then Heimdall announced the start of the duel. Sasaki immediately attacked Poseidon, who ran him through with his trident. But it turned out that Sasaki did all this only in his head. And so far, in all 18 attempts, he was killed by Poseidon. And in parallel with this, Brynhilde told us and the younger Valkyrie that once upon a time there were 13 gods of Olympus, until one of them was killed by Poseidon. This god was called Adamas. He was born the ruler of the cosmos, and he was the second most senior god after Hades. And the third was Poseidon. And when Adamas learned that Zeus, the youngest of all, ascended the throne, having defeated the Titans and the father of Kronos, Adamas said that he would not allow him to be on the throne. After all, the elders should not serve the younger ones, and he rebelled. He freed the imprisoned Titans in Tartarus, and he also subjugated the terrible beast Siphon and set out with his army. And then many of the gods went over to his side, and also he came to Poseidon and invited him to join him. But he called him pathetic and said that he would not help him. After all, the gods do not look for enemies, do not weave conspiracies, and do not ask. He said that the gods are originally ideal, and in his opinion, Adamas defiled this concept. But the second did not like the answer, and he decided to kill him. However, when he attacked Poseidon, he, looking into his eyes, cut him. And the witness of all this was Hermes, who, in addition to all this, was also a traitor. And after these events, history was rewritten. Next, we were returned to the battlefield again, where after thinking about how to kill a god who does not even look at him, Sasaki said that he did not know what to do, but he doesn't want to die. And they began to show us the life story of the great loser. It turns out that Kojiro Sasaki has never won a single fight in his life. He has always been a good swordsman. However, in order not to get hit by opponents who were stronger, he often gave up. After all, injuries could harm his career as a swordsman, but Sasaki always worked through all the fights in his head. And one day, thinking about how to kill Kagemasu, he, seeing a hare, began to repeat after him. And thus he began to improve his skills by training him in the wild, and he literally learned from wild animals. His talent was that when he lost a fight, he saw his way to victory more and more clearly, making work on his mistakes. He also ate a lot of meat to build muscle, and after 6 months he pumped his body. But in order to defeat Kagemasu, he imagined the battle with him 146 times in his head. And with just one move, he showed Kagemasu that he could defeat him. And over the next few years, Kojiro, receiving blows from the strongest swordsman, worked on his mistakes in his head and thus virtually defeated them. He lost to be the greatest, and so the world's greatest loser was born. Next, we were returned to the arena, where Kojiro realized that he could not lose. After all, so many parts of the great masters were invested in his skill that he simply cannot devalue it all. In this connection, he attacked Poseidon, and the blow was from behind the head. But Poseidon dodged this attack without any problems. However, Kojiro, using all his strength and skill, was able to stop the sword and flip it over to attack back, and he managed to cut Poseidon's hair. After that, Poseidon himself went on the attack and began to sprinkle Sasaki with a flurry of attacks. But it turned out that the swordsman remembered the movements of the god with his brain supercomputer and was able to evade everyone. It was the technique of 1,000 images. But then, Poseidon again attacked with lightning speed, which is why Kojiro could not even react. Also, the god called him a loser, and this was the first time he spoke to a man. However, Kojiro smiled and got to his feet, and asked why Poseidon was so happy. He answered because he is a god, and he is perfect in everything. But Kojiro called him wretched, and the god bombarded him with attacks again. And in the end, the god destroyed Kojiro's sword, but the swordsman refused to give up, because now it will not be the same as it was with Musashi. And we were shown a flashback from 1612, where there was a legendary battle between Musashi and Kojiro. And then he, realizing that Musashi is an incredibly strong opponent, and since at that time Kojiro was unable to defeat him, so as not to die, he surrendered. But then he changed his mind, and they decided to fight to the death. Their fight lasted only a few minutes, but even in those minutes they both managed to enjoy themselves. And then Kojiro left the same cross on Musashi's forehead. Well, he himself was then chopped with a cross. And for both swordsmen, this fight was the most difficult and happiest in their lives. Further, we were returned to the arena again, where Kojiro asked the god if he practiced his skills day and night before sunrise, and if his eyes filled with tears of gratitude for the opponents who made him stronger. And of course, that was a rhetorical question. After that, Kojiro raised the pieces of the sword, and they began to glow. He used double Wayland and had 2 swords. This was a feature of Christ, because this is the only Valkyrie in which 2 forces coexist. Next, they continued the fight, where now with 2 swords, Sasaki began to move like Musashi. He also began to use the different styles of the best masters he fought, and he managed to scratch the face of Poseidon, and he also wounded him in different places. And as a result, after several such attacks, Poseidon was all covered with wounds, and a gap appeared in the victory of the swordsman. But Poseidon only in response began to whistle, looking at his own blood. After that, he decided to fight in earnest, and with the next move, he wounded Kojiro in the shoulder. And it was like a storm of blows. And Kojiro went down again, and he even managed to break through the bottom. However, having heard the voices of those who gave him experience, he, having reached the bottom, pushed off from it. And he further began to predict everything, from the movements of the enemy to the breath of the wind. And now, using everything around, Kojiro began to calculate the blows of Poseidon, after which he cut off the hand of the god with the next attack, but Poseidon continued to fight desperately. However, Kojiro's next attack cut Poseidon's body apart, and it turns out that the great loser defeated the great god. Thus, he caused a whole storm of emotions among the gods. After that, a path appeared in front of Kojiro, But he began to fall, and Christ picked him up. And the swordsman thanked her for her work. But Brynhilde, although she was glad of the victory, but for her this is just one victory out of 7. After that, we were shown the temple of Zeus, where Ares, Hermes, Shiva, and Loki came, who began to make claims to Zeus because he was behaving stupidly. But Zeus replied that the man was stronger than his older brother Poseidon, and he said that they need to understand that people are strong, and this Valkyrie Brynhild really decided to defeat all the gods. And this means that they too must take this battle seriously, and Shiva said that he would fight next. But Zeus replied that not yet, because the Greek gods want revenge. Well, at the same time, Gear saw Hermes communicating with Brynhilde, and after we were transferred to the arena, which was transformed into London of the 19th century. It was the request of a fighter of mankind, and the fighter from the side of the gods successfully accepted this condition. And this will be the first ever street fight between God and man. The most famous killer in the history of mankind, Jack the Ripper, will act for people. He is also the most mysterious killer in history. And on the side of the gods will be the legendary hero, the demigod half-man Hercules. And then there is a clear battle between good and evil. If you want to continue, then write about it in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, like and press the bell so as not to miss new videos. AniMap was with you. Bye everyone.